Okay, we're going to review quickly the Punnett squares that we talked about in class. And if you'll notice here, you have a complete dominance Punnett square, which is most of what we learned. But we learned also that not all genes are completely dominant. So you don't have one allele or one characteristic such as yellow always overriding another characteristic, as we see here. So let's move to some of these exceptions. One of the exceptions is incomplete dominance. In incomplete dominance, you have the alleles of a red flower, which are dominant, blending with the alleles of a white flower, which are also dominant. So instead of getting a red or a white, we would get a pink. And the capital R, capital W that you would find inside all the Punnett squares would be representing the pink. Now also, besides incomplete dominance, we have codominance. And you'll notice here you have black feathers and white feathers. And when you cross them, every one of the offspring, 100% of the offspring, they're not going to be white, they're not going to be black, not going to be a blending where it would be brown, but they're going to show up with the black and the white. So this is two exceptions to the complete dominance, incomplete, and codominance. And you represent all of those with the capital letters. And then our blood types in humans, four main blood types are type A, type B, type AB, and type O. Codominance is represented in this. Whenever you have an A and a B come together, it's like the black feathers and the white feathers. You get both of these proteins showing up in the cell, so you have type AB blood. That is codominance. Then type O is the old way that we learned, the complete dominance. So it's completely recessive to all these others, so they are dominant over the O. The only way you will have type O blood is if you have two O alleles. And you'll notice down here, the mother has A and a father has A, and their sex cells or their gametes, and they come together, then you're going to have capital A, which will give you type A blood. If you have A and O together, you still have type O. And if you have A and B come together, you will have type AB blood. And then notice here, the only way you end up with type O blood is if you get an allele for O from mom and an allele from dad. So let's see if we can show that here. Let's say mother is type A, she's carrying the O allele, which is recessive, so it doesn't show up. Dad is type B, he's carrying the recessive allele. Now if this gamete and this gamete meet, they are going to be carrying the two O alleles, and then you will have a child with O blood. So there is a 25% chance of a type A and a type B blood parents having an offspring with type O. Also, we talked about a test cross. In a test cross, you are trying to cross for a test to determine whether your tall plant is capital T, carrying both alleles for tall, or capital T, little t, carrying an allele for short. And since you can't see the genotype, what you can do is cross your plant with a plant that is short. If a plant is short, we know that its genotype is little t, little t. You will then analyze your offspring. So in this case, we got 50% of our plants are tall. Even if we're not looking at the genotype, we're looking at the phenotype, we know they're tall. We know if we grew 100 plants that if 50 of them were short, 50% were short. Well, there's no way you could have gotten a short plant unless the tall plant's allele had a lowercase letter or a short allele. So this is a way to determine the genotype, trying to figure out the genotype of a tall plant or any other plant that's showing the dominant trait. It's called a test cross. And then in sex-linked traits, you see some of these recessive sex-linked traits on the X chromosome more common in males. Hemophilia and colorblindness are an example. And that is because males have an X and a Y, and the gene is only on the X. Females are XX, so they'll have two alleles for it. So normally when you have a lowercase letter, you have to have another lowercase letter. Well, that's not the case right here. That does not happen because there is no gene on the Y chromosome for this type of trait. So if a boy receives a colorblind allele, they're going to be colorblind. If a girl receives a colorblind allele, her other allele, if it's dominant, will mask that, and so they will not be colorblind. They'll have normal vision. So this is sex-linked traits, and they tend to show up a lot more commonly in males because of that. And then the last piece of information we went over that had to do with Punnett square dominant and recessive is not always the case. Here we have a dominant red flower trait crossed with a white flower, which should give us this. But sometimes the environment can play a role in shutting off the dominant trait, resulting in, instead of red, having an ivory color or a white color plant, even though they have a dominant allele. And that's due to environmental influences. So that is something else that can go beyond the complete dominance as we see in Mendelian traits. So remember to study for the test tomorrow on Punnett squares. You have links within your notes you can look at Punnett square practice. You also have links on the classroom website.